I have just woken up, I haven't slept very well, it feels like a long stressful holiday. I have to check my emails and messages and edit the photos and finishing touches on the clothes, and I think I'm missing some detail shots, and I think I missed someone's birthday yesterday, and then there's Instagram and the climate emergency, and Blender crashed last night, so I guess we're starting over and I absolutely need to do laundry and cleaning is way overdue, and most of my work is digital now. I've picked up some other projects too. I like to work on several different things at the same time, each is like a break from the other, it keeps things interesting. So I'm editing some stuff for the website. I'm also doing some 3D modeling stuff and working on AR as well. I find editing is the hardest part of the process. Most of my work is around sustainability. Virtuality complements it. When this happens, I take a break to work a bit on the Students with Fashion Revolution Instagram account. It's a little project I started during lockdown to showcase work from students who work sustainably. It's small but it's growing. After lunch, I check my schedule. And I go for a walk. I talk to myself, to get my ideas in order. I want to finish my website for when the BAFCSM website launches. I'm working on a little game. My collection uses a lot of modular assembly, the garments can be assembled, disassembled and reassembled into a virtually infinite number of designs using the same materials. I thought it could be didactic to illustrate that with a dress-up game. I'm also doing some freelance projects around IG filters. I cannot show you that bit. So here is a shot of my messy room. This is my sewing machine, which arrived a week before the deadline. I love her. This is the heat press where I remelt plastic. And this is the plastic packaging I'm remelting. I still have some finishing touches to add to the collection. I'm remelting some plastic packaging, you know the stuff fabric rolls come in. They're quite difficult to recycle since they come with all the delivery tags and barcodes stuck to them. So they need to go through a whole cleaning process before I can reuse them. The colors I dispose of are limited, but that's part of the game, trying to design with what I have as opposed to bending reality to what I want it to be. I'm making some little buttons for one of the skirts. I'm quite adamant about making the whole collection from upcycled materials. There's only some little bits left, cutting some threads, hand stitching some hems, details really. It's quite late now, I've had a shower and changed into my PJs. I haven't quite finished making the buttons, but my dress-up game is up and running. I'll work a bit more on the buttons tomorrow. I've still got some emails to get to, so I'm doing that now. The deadline for the website hand-in is tomorrow. I've already got my layout, now I just have to finish some color corrections, so the photos don't look like they've been taken on a phone, you know. I think I'm gonna pop back to London during the summer. Anyways, I have to move out of my room. And I still have a pair of trousers that I made for collection stuck in London. Anyway, I'm tired. Good night.